going on, everybody? I'm Steven and this is Build Brothers, and today we're going to go over a problem code that you might have experienced on your car and how to fix it. So the current code that I'm encountering on this car, I think it's the final one before we get this car inspected, is I have it on my phone here, the camshaft position sensor A, bank 2. Now on the 05 to 09 Mustangs, bank 2 is driver's side. Bank 1 is on passenger side if you have the same problem code or something similar. So this is P0345, and then there's another code that is similar, I believe it's P0349. So if you have either of those codes, I'm going to show you the two ways that should fix it, and we're going to do one of those two. I already did one. I'm going to tell you about them both right now. So you have two options. It could be bad wiring. So let's say your car was in an accident, or someone was working on your car and they cut it, bumped it really hard, and it ended up pulling a wire or something like that. It could just be a loose wire, could be your connector's loose. If the wire's bad, then what you have to do is you have to actually clip it right off the wiring harness. You want to give yourself a little bit extra, and you're going to have to purchase the wiring harness connector from either Ford, which I found really quick that Ford is about $55 for this car. An aftermarket one, which is identical, is like $10. So you make your choice. You want to keep it OEM, it's going to cost you like $50 to $60, and like $10 for an aftermarket. So that's that. You clip it, you're going to have to solder it, which I would look up a video on how to do it. I already did it to this. I thought it was the wire, it wasn't, because it's still throwing the same code. So I bought the actual sensor. So what the sensor cost me was about $25. I bought it at the auto parts store. You may be able to get it cheaper online. It's a little plastic guy like this, and it's really easy to change out. You literally are just going to slide it in. There's a bolt in your car already, which I'll show you what you have to do to get to it. And then you're just going to slide this one in, connect the connector, and start the car. I'm not 100% sure if you have to clear the codes, so we'll test that. So now I'm going to go ahead and take off this intake hose here, and so we can see where we're going with this. So I'll do that, and then I'll show you the sensor in the car. So for your reference, generally you'll have to do 3 things, maybe 4 to take this off. 4 things. You have to disconnect this guy here. This is a little clip, which this will then swivel out. You'll have to disconnect this connector over here. This is just a little red clip right here, which is not fun to do with your finger. Screwdriver would probably work better, and then that just slides out. You'll have to unscrew this. This is just a clamp. A flathead screwdriver or a very small socket will work, and same thing there. Then this thing just pulls off and lifts out. Then we'll be able to see the sensor, so I'll show you that. Alright, so we have the flathead here. Now we're going to go ahead and pull it. Now on this clip here, down at the bottom, that little green one, there's this little plastic piece you have to push. It's underneath for my car. That'll take that off. Just unscrew this quick. So now I will show you where this is. Here I just took the connector off. This is simply just you just push this little guy in here, hopefully you can see that, and it pulls out. If you notice there's hot glue on there, that's just because I wanted the wires to stay in, as they seemed a little bit loose because it is aftermarket, so I just wanted to make sure. Just put a dab of hot glue on there. There's some extra wire here, so I tied it up. I'm going to put a cover on that. So if you just so happen to be working on an 05 to 09 Mustang, maybe some more cars, mine uses an 8mm wrench. So underneath you'll notice there is one single bolt that's holding it on, so you just shouldn't be too tight. Mine was actually really loose. And so you just crack it loose with the wrench, and I'm able to unscrew mine by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. Seems relatively long. And don't lose it. Set that aside. Now I should be able to pull this out. So for all my Mustang fans, there's my neighbor out here. This is a 96 Cobra, I believe. You'll see him. He generally rips it when he comes down here. Here's the sensor. I just pulled it out. It just took a little wiggle. It just wasn't that easy to do with one hand. So I pulled it out. What you'll notice also, just so you don't be alarmed, there is oil on the end of it, and that is because it does actually enter inside the engine where there is oil. That's nothing to be worried about. So obviously the new one won't have that, but just an FYI, when you do change it out, you will see that. So the next one we're just going to slide in, put that bolt back in, and tighten it. Not very tight. We don't need to crank it down. I'm not going to torque it, but if you want to follow what you should do, check the torque settings for your car and use a torque wrench. But in my case, I'm just going to put it a little bit tougher than hand tight. This thing was super loose. I could break it free with 2 fingers. Here's the new one. We're going to go ahead and plug this in and put the bolt in, and we'll see if it clears the code for us. Okay, one thing you may encounter is when you slide it in, you'll notice that you'll have a gap. That's expected. The reason there's a gap is there's a pretty big O-ring on this, which allows the oil not to come out. Obviously, we don't want that. Same thing as taking it out. When you put it in, don't put the bolt in right away. Wiggle it and push. Make sure you don't push on just this tab over here because you don't want to break it. Pushing on the main part is the best. And if you just wiggle it and push while you're wiggling it, it'll go in, and then line it up to put the bolt in. Because if you put the bolt in first, you can't wiggle it, and it makes it a lot harder to put in. I'm sure if you're strong enough you can. And then it should be simply just plugging this guy in, and then reassembling the rest, which I'll do off the camera because it's pretty much just a reverse process. And then we'll start the car and see if the code clears. I have my phone here, and I have the Bluetooth OBD2 transmitter, so I can hook up the torque app, which I have, which will allow me to clear the codes if we need to. We can also pull data off them just in case it's still reading an error. So let's see how it does. I let it warm up for a little bit, and right now we'll check it out. So as you can see, the only thing showing in there is the low tire pressure, which is what it says over here if you can read that. But the check engine light is no longer on. So that's really all it is. You just replace the sensor. If you need, I would do the sensor first, unless you're comfortable soldering into the harness. I would look at the harness. If there's no wires frayed or pulled out, then I would focus on the sensor. It's more likely the sensor. It's much easier to replace the sensor. You're not cutting up your harness, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So easier to take a bolt out than it is to buy solder, buy flux, buy the sensor wire connector, and do it all together. And a soldering iron. You need a decent one to do that, or at least you should use a decent one. So this was an easy fix. Next video, for the 5-minute tech tips, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the torque app and how to use it in your car to clear engine codes and to read data from all your cars. So check out the next video if you find that stuff interesting and you're curious about it. Alright? Until next time, guys, make sure you like and subscribe and share this. See ya.